Hey there. Welcome to the Literary Escape Podcast. I'm your host, Becky, and I'm glad you're here today. On the Literary Escape Podcast, we talk about books. We talk about escapes that we can have through our books. And I always have some great book recommendations for you. So, buckle up and let's see where we're going today. Enjoy the show. Hey there, and welcome back to Literary Escapes Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have a treat for you, a conversation I had with author Rachel Hauck and her career as a Christian author and what she has done throughout the years. So sit back and relax and enjoy a fun conversation. Let's dive right in.
Hi there.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So, how did you even get into writing?
So I always wanted to write, and my father would tell me, Rachel, you're a writer, be a writer. And all the way up through college, I was a journalism major, but I think at one point I called him and I said, I think I want to be a teacher. And he said, nope, you got to be a writer. And he was right. He just saw that was eventually what I would gravitate to anyway, which is funny because my first job out of college, I worked for Harris Corporation when my particular division made computers for newspapers. So they wanted people with journalism background, journalism experience.
Okay.
And so we trained the newsroom, and then eventually I worked on the classified advertising system, how to use our products. And so, I had to know what a pica and a point was, and the galleys and gutters, and, all of the measurements and all of the lingo that goes into producing a newspaper. And so I ended up being a teacher anyway. I traveled all over the world.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Funny. So I say, though, all of my travels, I was writing anyway. You're gleaning from people. I was always curious about people, always asking people, well, how'd you meet? How'd you do that? Why do you do that? What are you doing? So was always a little curious. But anyway, I got married. A year later, I felt like to quit my job. And my husband was like, I think you're supposed to quit your job. I'm like, okay. And I had had a job since I was 14.
Yeah.
And I write in the Christian space. And it had just really started coming online. Jeanette Oak with her Canadian Westerns was kind of the Love Comes Softly, which is a, very popular Hallmark series.
Yeah.
She was kind of the one who opened the door to, I was a commercial fiction. We had other fiction, Christie, some of those kind of stories, but they were like a one-off, or what you saw was biblical fiction.
Right.
So here's a historical, but kind of with a contemporary feel to it. And so she kind of kicked open the door for people to write stories with kind of a faith-based. So that's
interesting. Okay.
That was kind of early 80s. And then we see Ted Dekker comes along probably in mid-90s, but then you see things like Frank Peretti with This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness, huge stories. Francine Rivers' Redeeming Love is really popular. So we start to see some of the publishing houses. Now, in the beginning, it's different now, but in the beginning, Christian publishing, you're going to get a whole history here. Christian publishing was mission-based. And so, they published things, and that went into mission and supported missionaries and supported missions. And so they were very much a kind of a not-for-profit organization. And so now they're more
interesting
actual publishing industry. And so they didn't take a lot of chances with material that they didn't think, and just in the Christian space. And I think even still today, Christian fiction is it's not a hard sell, it's gaining ground. But I was listening to somebody the other day, and she said she actually writes inspirational nonfiction. She writes in that space, but when she reads fiction, she reads general market. So I think it just is kind of something that we're still growing in.
Yeah.
But at the time, they had Zondervan Bookstore. They had walls and walls of Christian fiction, and I didn't even know it existed. Wow. And my husband and I just started reading it. We didn't have a television, so we would just sit around the evening and read, which I'm so grateful I didn't have a television, because I would have done that.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. So I started writing. We got a computer. So desktop computers were coming online.
Yeah.
Early 90s. We got a computer. I was reading this World War II series, probably from Gilbert Morris. And I just thought, I can do this. So I just started writing. People would always ask me, what do you want to do? And I would say I wanted to write. Always wanted to write. I thought I wanted to write children's novel because I really loved the Laura Ingalls Wilder Little House series.
Yeah.
And I thought it was easier. It's not. writing for children is not easier than writing for adults.
That's so funny. Yeah. Huh.
So
I worked in a kids library for a while at an elementary school, and I love you have to capture their attention just like an adult.
yeah. And you have to use language. It's a language level.
Yeah. And kids, like the beginning readers, were so anxious to get to the good stories, because the ones that were, a lot of the ones that were the beginning chapter books, that kind of thing, were, in their opinion, very boring. And they wanted to get up to the, Harry Potters or whatever.
Oh, sure.
Stories that were fun. And so there's this, you just got to get through these to get to those kind of thing. And so finding books that fit that initial that initial niche was, it was fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And you think that everybody kind of reads up. So 16-year-olds, I write for adults. So people would say, well, what's your target audience? I would say early 30s on up.
Okay.
It's obviously appropriate for 20-year-olds. It's just a matter, are they interested? All of my characters are 30 years old, because I figure that's just kind of like right in that space. And I don't have to remember how old they are. They're 30, period. Everybody's
exactly
30.
Everybody's 30.
Every book, everybody's 30, unless I have a reason for them to not be 30, which I've had that in the past.
Okay.
But it just I feel like it's a nice middle ground for older readers, because I'm 61 and I can kind of remember being 30. It's a little bit harder to remember being 18, 19, and 20. So
yeah, that's a whole different headspace.
That's a whole different headspace. And so our 16-year-old girls interested in reading about a 30-year-old, some of them are, but they might be more interested in reading about 20, 21, 22-year-olds. That's where we saw the rise of new adult fiction. Those girls that are kind of those characters.
And that's another one that's hard to find really good, clean books, I guess, because my daughter was a very bright reader, and finding books that were appropriate for, a 16, 14, 15, 16-year-old, 18-year-old to read, that weren't, too mature, in my opinion, for her.
You don't want to stir up things they're not ready for.
Yeah, and she wasn't really interested in, reading about 30-year-olds or, and so yeah, it was really hard to find books that would capture her attention.
Yeah, and one of the things that we face when we write in the Christian space is some of the more conservative angles, more conservative streams. I'll say that, more conservative streams where, the kids are homeschooled, which I think is fabulous. I have friends who homeschool. I have family that homeschools.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
However you want to educate your children, but then just depends on what they've been exposed to. So even at 14, 15, 16, just because it's Christian doesn't mean it's always age appropriate. So, we have to.
That's interesting. Yeah.
We have to deal with more severe subjects, or sometimes we deal with a little bit more sensuality in an adult version of the book. There's no, sex scenes, doors are closed, but you're dealing with very real feelings of two people who are falling in love. And it may not be appropriate for your 14-year-old. You may not have had all of those conversations with them.
Right.
Had the biological conversation, but you haven't had the emotional conversation.
Right. Right.
So that's something that, I often feel like, as someone who writes in this space, I'm like, I want to be a good novel that anyone would want to read, because all books have some level of spirituality to them. All books have some level of life philosophy of the author, so to speak.
Yeah,
so,
I would agree with that. Yeah.
You want them to be, so you want everyone to find your books enjoyable, entertaining, good message, hopeful at the end, satisfying ending, if not a happy ending.
Right.
But then there's an expectation to be a little bit of what some of the Christian market would want you to have in the story. So I write what I feel like is right for the story, and I just leave it to God after that. The outcome is on your shoulders. I'm writing what I feel like is right for the story. And so.
And are you traditionally published? So you have people that are looking at it that.
Oh yeah.
Will,
so I was
put their 2 cents in.
Yes. I was traditionally published for 15, 16 years.
Wow.
And then I took a break and I did a couple of indie books. But because I was traditionally published and I knew that whole process, I used some of the same people, some of the same editors, and some of the same process
Okay.
I had at my traditional house. So I went through the same process because I felt like, even though I'm independent for these 2 books, 3 books, I can't lower my standard. I have to still have standard. I have to deliver what people have expected of a book that with my name on it. So that proved to be a challenge because it takes a long time to do all that.
Yeah, on your own, especially. Yeah.
It's a little bit pricey and a little bit time consuming. And in the indie world, you have to write fast.
That's the impression that I get. Yeah. I'm staggered by how many books some of the indie authors can crank out.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I have a writing partner, Susie Warren, and she is amazingly fast. She writes so fast and she writes well. You know, you can write fast and not write well. You can write well, but you don't write fast. She has the ability to do both.
Wow, and what a gift.
What a huge gift. And I told her one day, I said, you know what? I think you look at a book like a project. I've got 2 months to do this project. I'm like, oh, I have to write this story. It's art, emotion. I have to, you know, I feel like I approach it. And then I'm like, oh, it's a project. You better get
that.
You know, I always make my deadlines. And technically, I write fairly fast for, you know, some people take years to write a book. You know,
right.
I can write 2 in about 16 months or so. But, you know, it just... I'm more of a like, I just want to flow down the river with this book and see what comes up. She's like, I got something else to do in 2 months. I'm typing this one out right now.
Exactly. This one's done.
Yeah, and she's fabulous. She's just fabulous at it.
That's so funny.
I admire her a great deal.
I love that there's so many different ways to do it, you know?
Yeah, right. And then that's that caveat. So when I signed a contract last summer after, you know, spending 2 years in the indie world, I really struggled because I did have a 3rd book in the series that I had to put off because I had other commitments. But I really struggled with feeling like I failed. I'm like, you didn't give it enough time. You needed to make adjustments to wait to what you were writing, how fast you were writing. And so I really struggled with that and thinking, you know, you left a lot of money on the table and, you know, look how fast, look what they're doing over there. Why can't you do that?
Yeah. You know, there's always that. Yeah.
Bump it, be yourself. And not everything is about the money. You know? Of course you do a job to get paid. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you want to make the most money possible. But if you're killing yourself or you're just, that's your only motivation, all the joy goes out of it.
Yes, I would agree with that. I felt like some of that is some of the indie authors, you know, when they're publishing like a book a month or something, or how is there joy in that? Maybe, I don't know. Seems like it would be really hard, but I
think if you're in the river of a book a month, you have a whole different process. You have, and that works really well for what I would call formula books, like suspense, thriller, fantasy, where you have like certain blocks that just
you have to have, yeah,
you can plug and play a little bit, or maybe some levels of romance. And I'm not knocking it at all. I think that's fabulous. But I think when you have those elements, and then you just create some different characters and different motivations and stuff. But you kind of have some of those, you know what you're doing.
Formulaic, yeah. And I mean, as a reader, we know that going into certain genres that it's a formula, and you expect certain things at certain points, and it's okay. You know, it's okay that it's like that. And it's fun to see what different people do with it.
Yeah, that's right. And there are readers who just consume that. And that's how, and if you can produce it, they'll read it.
They will.
But what I read is, you know, these big kind of general market or Christian market literary novels, I don't like the term women's fiction because it has a certain connotation, but I say contemporary fiction. You know,
I like that better, because it's like, why, you know, do they have men's fiction?
I know, right? I know. Well, it just means that it's not a strong romance, I guess. Okay. But I feel
with probably a woman main character, maybe.
Yeah, almost every book has a female protagonist, I'm sure.
I find all that really weird, the women's fiction.
Well, all of the things that we complain about, on the playing field of feminism and all those areas, I'm like, we rock fiction, because almost every protagonist is a female. There's a few male protagonists, Harlan Coben and John Grisham.
Yeah.
Michael Crichton and those guys, Tom Clancy wrote male protagonists. There's plenty of male protagonists, C.J. Box, but most fiction is women all over the place. Most authors are women, and most heroines and protagonists are women, for sure.
Well, and it's so funny to think that, like, back not even that long ago, Jane Austen had to not use her real name, an author. I forget how she did her first book, but her brother had to submit it, and crazy to think that women weren't supposed to be authors.
I know, but look how far we've come.
Yeah, I love that. I love hearing people's stories about how they get there. And so what was your first published book?
My first published book was a little tiny thin romance called Lambert's Pride. It was in one of those collections, the monthly subscription collections.
Okay.
The Barber Publishing produced 4 heart songs every month. And I met one of their top authors at the time. This was probably in the late 90s.
Okay.
Met her at a conference, Lynn Coleman, and she said, why don't we do something together? And she lived in Florida, so we got together. And she talked to the publisher and said, hey, I think Rachel can do this. Why don't we do something together? So we wrote the first one together, and then I wrote the other books in the series.
Fun.
But what's really funny about this, Becky, is that I initially did not want to write for them. I read their guidelines, super sweet romance, a list of words you could not use.
Oh my.
Like, good grief. Lots of G's. You couldn't, like, oh geez, you couldn't say that. I thought, well, how are these people going to be real? And so because it was kind of aimed at a really conservative market, and I thought, this isn't me. I'm not doing this. Well, guess what? Yes, you are.
Be careful what you say, right?
Right. Yeah. So I wrote it, and then Lynn kind of put her spin on it. We brainstormed and plotted the book together. But that kind of taught me, I was working full time also. I was a project manager at a software company at, where I came up for Harris. And so I was writing at night, writing on the weekends. I know what it's like to do that whole full-time thing and have to have a book deadline. They're only about 40,000 words. So it took me 5 months because I had to work. But that was my first book. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. And then go ahead.
I was going to say, then Chick Lit came along right in that whole swirl.
Nice. Yeah.
Kristen Billerbeck wrote What a Girl Wants. It was just going to break out Chick Lit in the Christian space. And I was reading all this Chick Lit. I was reading general market Chick Lit. I was reading Kristen's books. And I said, I can do this. This is me. I wrote a Chick Lit when I was 12. I'm not kidding. I wrote a story about a girl who lived in New York City. I'd never even been to New York City. Had an apartment, and I don't know what her job was because I was a huge Mary Tyler Moore fan. So I wrote about Mary Tyler Moore.
Oh,
so
fun.
I loved that voice. I thought it was funny. I didn't know if I could write funny, but I thought I'd give it a try.
Yeah.
And then Steeple Hill, which is a arm of Harlequin.
Okay.
They came up with Steeple Hill Cafe, which was mom lit and chick lit. So my next
fun.
George on Her Mind, with set here in the Brevard County where I live on the east coast of Florida. And and it was semi-autobiographical. I pulled a lot from my corporate experience.
Okay.
I hyperbolized a lot. So if anybody out there knows me and reads it, it's not anybody you know.
That's so funny.
But I took some of my real physical experiences there and put them on the page. So that
hard
was
not to.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I steal from everybody.
Yeah, it's hard. It's funny. I forget who it was I was talking to, but they were saying that they hear all these different conversations, like sitting in a restaurant or something, and you hear all these different conversations going on. And I do that. It's hard not to hear others. My husband pays zero attention to anyone else. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I want to hear I need to hear what's finishing up in that conversation. and you kind of build your own stories, I guess, of what's happening in people's lives that you have no idea who they are or what's going on. And
so I was, same with me. I was in a restaurant. I have a couple of these stories, but I was in a restaurant. My husband and I go to the same diner for breakfast a couple mornings a week. And there was a table of women, and they were talking about dogs, and they were talking about kennels and probably breeding dogs. And I just thought it was fascinating because I currently was writing a book called To Save a King. And the crown prince is in my little town in Tennessee called Hartspen. And he's become friends with the heroine, Gemma. And she rescues animals. And this old vet has brought her 6 puppies. Their mom was killed. And so he goes, you got to raise these, Gemma. I don't have time. You got to do it. She's like, I don't know how to do this. And of course, the prince is like, I will help. And so I named them all for the cast of Friends. So there's Ross, Joey, Chandler, Rachel, Monica, and Phoebe.
Funny.
So as I'm listening to these women talk, I thought, I got to get over there and ask them.
I got to talk to them. Yeah.
And they were saying, that's how you name, AKA, I think that's the right term, AKA puppies, is you name them for movie characters, you name them for fiction characters. That's how they get named. And I was like, my brilliance just emerged. I didn't even know.
That is so funny. I didn't know that either.
I know. It was kind of cool to kind of have that confirmed. And
yeah.
I think I asked them a couple of questions, but this is the funniest story though. So for a season, my husband taught at a private high school here, and he's been a pastor for 35 years. But anyway, he did a small stint at a private school. So we were at the staff Christmas party, and we were at another teacher's home, beautiful home. And we were all having chili and sitting around talking, having a good time. And we were sitting across from one of the young teachers. I think she was elementary school teacher, probably in their early 20s.
Okay.
And her husband was not eating. Everybody is eating, but he is not eating. I said, what's wrong? Why aren't you eating? I don't know how I came to ask him, but I was like, why aren't you eating?
Yeah.
He goes, I don't eat food at other people's houses. I said, what? I don't eat food at other people's houses. Why not? Well, I don't know how it was prepared. I said, there's the kitchen. There's the refrigerator. There's the cabinet. Open it up. Take a peek.
Yeah.
What? I said, well, what do you eat? Well, pizza. You don't know how that was prepared. And I'm like, do you eat frozen food? Yeah. And I said, have you read about frozen food? Have you read Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential? You'll never eat at a restaurant again. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And right in the middle, my husband goes, stop. Rachel's an author. And I just have to warn you that anything you say and do will
be used in a book.
But that was just too much to let go. I questioned him so much. I think he started to doubt his own phobia. But he just kind of had this mental thing about
I don't eat in other people's houses.
And I said, are you the only one in your family that has this? Do other people in your family have this? I was really kind of drilling him. And his wife was just kind of like smirking, like, I told you.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. So has that shown up in a book yet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was
okay.
I think that probably showed up in either that chick lit George on Her Mind or the next book after.
Okay.
So that was like 2006 and 2007. I also had a roommate. She had a funny phobia. She would eat hamburger if it was chopped up for like tacos.
Okay.
But if you made it into a patty and cooked it, no, yuck, wasn't going to eat that. And I said, okay, that's going in the book. I'm sorry.
There's so many funny things about people. I love that.
I think I actually have a book. I don't know if I still have it. I hope I do. It's a book of things that people are afraid of, phobias, weird things, just a crazy list. It's like that thick of all kinds of like heard of somebody who wouldn't cross the road or something. It's crazy.
That is, yeah, there's a phobia for everything, isn't there?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh, maybe this is it right here. I gotta show you this. I think this is it. That book of perfectly useless information.
Oh, nice.
And I think
that's so funny.
Yeah, it just has all kinds of weird things that you never know what you can use as quirky dialogue.
Yeah.
Or some weird thing. Or like you have a group of people sitting around and somebody just throws out some really, maybe after a tense situation, and somebody just throws out a really random fact. And it just takes the scene and the story or the conversation in a different direction.
Completely different direction, yeah.
Yeah, or sometimes it could be useless and it actually could be useful to you in your story process. So yeah.
That's funny. My son loves useless facts and being able to throw them around. So I'm going to have to find that book for him.
Yeah.
I think he would enjoy that.
You could take him on.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm telling you have it.
That's and so funny. He would.
He'll go, oh, well, did you know?
Wait a minute. I got one for you.
Right. And you have your book down on the side and you're kind of like.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny.
That's funny, yeah.
So I was reading that The Wedding Dress is your first New York Times one, right?
I would like to say first of several, but it's the one and only.
Okay. My
one and only. I'm proud. Yeah, thank you.
Jesus. That's awesome. Yeah. That book tell us about the book, because I like the premise of this book.
So I was writing for Thomas Nelson, which is now HarperCollins Christian, and I had done a series of low country novels with them. But in the middle of that, I had written also the series with country artist Sarah Evans called the Songbird Novels. And so I had completed all of that. And I think they were kind of holding on to see how all of my sales were going to do. I was grateful that my low country series had earned out. Once you get on the trad side, it's all about money. I mean, it's just a business. Mm-hmm. You have to sell well for them to continue with you. And
sure.
And if they're not selling you well as an author, it's so disappointing, but maybe there's another house that can do something different with you and you can find a nice spot. So it's a both and. So anyway, I think they were looking, my first series with them didn't sell well. And so they were just looking, and then they were kind of probably watching what happened with Sarah's books. So they gave me a 1-book contract, kind of, I think it was a consolation prize. I really do. And I was fascinated with the split time structure, which is part of the story set in the past and part of the story set in
like the dual timelines. Yeah, I love those.
The first one I read was The Shape of Mercy by Susan Meisner. And I just thought it was fascinating. What fascinated me about it was you could actually kind of time travel a little bit, for lack of a better word. I would love to know, if I could, and I'm sure you would too, if we could go back and talk to our ancestors about, why'd you make this decision?
Yeah.
Why'd you move here? Why'd you do that job? Why'd you name dad this or whatever?
Yeah.
Then, can you tell me about ancestors that I don't know about? We would all love to do that. And so that's what I thought the dual timeline allowed to happen in the story. So nice. I could look at the protagonist's past. They don't know, but the reader knows. And then it's a matter of weaving the stories together.
Weaving them together, yeah.
So the past kind of heals the present. And then I did one book, The Writing Desk, where the present healed the past. So that was
that's interesting. Okay.
That kind of fulfilled a promise, and a promise that wasn't kept. The contemporary heroine fulfilled the promise. So,
cool.
So that's what I did with The Wedding Dress. And so it was 2012 and 1912. And the idea for The Wedding Dress came when I was hanging out with some women in Nashville, outside of Nashville. We got together on Twitter. We knew each other loosely, and we're like, let's hang out one weekend. And we said, and we're literally tweeting this conversation.
Okay.
In the early days of Twitter, probably 08, 09.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Kim Cash Tate was one of the women. She's doing really well with like the Cling series, African-American author who's had great success.
Nice.
Anyway, we were just going back and forth, and we said, let's just do it. Put a date on the calendar. Let's just not say we will and never do it. So there we are all together, one of them's homes outside of Nashville. And they were talking, the hostess was talking about finding her daughter's wedding dress. And when you know, you know. And all of a sudden, Becky, I was like, boom, I was gone. I was like in wedding dress land, like, ooh,
oh, that's fun.
Like this one wedding dress that 4 women wore over 100 years, but they're not connected to each other. Like they're not mother to granddaughter to niece. They're not connected. Originally, they were going to be connected. And so in the meantime, the conversation had changed because one of them, women, had been the president of Borders Bookstore. And she was currently the president at Thomas Nelson, the former president at Thomas Nelson. One of them was the VP of marketing in the children's and gift section. And one of them, Kim Cash Tate, had been an entertainment lawyer in a previous life. And they're all talking business, right? They've gone on to talk business and strategy. And I'm like,
you're still back on wedding dresses. Yeah.
I was like, hey guys, what about this wedding dress? And they were like, yeah, run with that. And then later that night, we're getting ready to go to bed. They all came in my room like, no, we really like that idea, Rachel. Like, no, yay, we're for you.
That's so funny.
I called, I had pitched another idea, kind of a Cinderella rewrite to my editor. And I called her and I go, what about this? And she goes, I just got chills. So I'm like, we're doing it. So we did the wedding dress. And just from the get-go, it sold really well from the get-go. Nice. And then it came out in 2012.
Okay.
It came out in 2012. And then in 2013, they put it on sale on the Amazon Daily Deal on New Year's Eve, which is one of their biggest day. So then in those days, only one author had the Daily Deal. So I had the Daily Deal on New Year's Eve. My good friend Colleen Coble had the Daily Deal on Christmas Day. Those are the 2 biggest sale days.
Dang.
Or ebooks. There are ebooks at that time. Well, anytime you have a Daily Deal, it's an ebook. And I sold really, really well. So much that the president of HarperCollins, who had acquired Thomas Nelson, was like, wait, who's this?
Who's this?
Where is this from? What is this? And he literally said, is that one of those books with the bonnet on it? You know, one of the Amish, because Amish sell so well. Like, no, it's just just kind of a romance book from the Christian space. And he was like, well, all right. You know, so I think it was the #1 selling ebook that week. So that's why I got attention. And then 2015, it went on sale again and hit the USA Today. And then later that year, they put it on sale with a whole bunch of titles for Christmas and the holidays. And it outsold everybody at that point. And we went into 2016 and they said, oh, it's on sale again for February. And I was like, okay. I have other books, you know. And it just, Amazon put it on the front page. Now I know you can be, you kind of have a customized front page, but if there's things Amazon wants you to see that it's on the front page.
Okay.
So now they've gone to monthly deals. So it was part of the monthly deals, and it was all of their kind of featured monthly books. I've had monthly deals since then, and even I couldn't find out where it was the monthly deal. I had to actually type in the title to find out it was on sale, but it was on the front page of Amazon, the second book. And it just, we were downloading like 900 copies a day. It just,
how fun.
And then they got on it. Then other retailers get on it. I'm not sure how other retailers, if they were in on it from the beginning or if it just started selling and they started noticing it, but it just started selling everywhere because you cannot hit the New York Times if you just sell well on Amazon.
Okay.
So Amazon authors have a hard time
getting on. Yeah. Especially if you're KU, I would think, because that's just Amazon, right? Yeah. Just
Amazon. So even Amazon's Montlake, they're publishing imprints. That's why they created their own charts, which is just as valid as any other bestseller list. So anyway, I was hearing how well it was selling, and about a few weeks later, I got a call, and they were like, "Rachel, we're all in a room together." And I'm like, "Okay, great. What's going on?" You're #9 on the New York Times. I'm like, ah! Then I just had
how fun.
Really, really good friends at a writer's retreat, and it was super fun. It stayed there for 9 weeks on the New York Times.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations. What a cool thing to have happened.
I know. So my poor publisher, though, all the other authors are calling, how can you do that for me? And they're like, we don't know. We don't know. We can't do it.
Crazy magic that happened. Yeah.
I call it the God factor. And what's funny was 2 of my favorite books that I read in 2015 was The Girl on the Train and Kristen Hannah's Nightingale. And I rode the New York Times above, between, or below those 2 books for 9 weeks. It was a contest to see like where
shuffling around. Yeah. That's crazy.
And then I fell off and they stayed on, but that's okay.
You were there.
I was there.
You were there. That's amazing. I love that. That's good stuff. So what are you working on now?
So now I'm working on a traditional book. So I have the 2 indie books, the True Blue Royals. There's one right back there.
Mm-hmm.
To Love a Prince and To Save a King. And there's a 3rd book coming in that called To Win a Crown, because they have a sister that they didn't know about it. You know what I realized, Becky, when I started that book, and I thought, let's do something different. The queen had a baby that she didn't tell anybody about. And I'm like, oh no, I did the secret baby trope. I was like,
are you allowed to do that in the Christian?
Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're allowed to do that. But it was funny, like, you think, I don't want to write tropes. I don't want to write to a trope. Well, Prince is a trope. I love that. But the secret baby trope, I was like, oh yeah. But it worked. Sorry, yeah. Anyway, so I put that aside to write a book for Bethany House Publishers. It's called The Best Summer of Our Lives. It's about 4 girls who met in kindergarten. They've been best friends all through high school. And their post-high school, before college summer is supposed to be the best summer of their lives. They're really going to milk it for all it's worth. And things do not go as planned. So we're in the middle of them. They live in Florida, but they get shipped off to be camp counselors for a restart of a girls' camp in Tumbleweed, Oklahoma. And it's exactly like it sounds.
Because everybody wants to go to Oklahoma.
In the summer.
Yeah. Tumbleweed.
So I'm
nice.
on my 3rd pass for that. And this is where I start, getting in the weeds. My first fast draft, okay, I got a feel for the story. The second one, you kind of like everything you've written and you're kind of, okay, this is good. This one, I'm like, no, you're not hitting it. You got to redo some of these scenes. You got to layer it a little bit.
Yeah.
Boring.
Break out the golf cart.
You said that already. No, really, that's going to be my new motto. Break out the golf cart.
I like that.
The backdrop is for this story. So this is what I would consider, it might get shelved as women's fiction, but I consider it contemporary novel. I have 4 heroines. I have 4 points of view in 1977 and 1997. It's not necessarily a split time, but I will have forward scenes. But in 1977, the second week of June, 3 little girls at Camp Scott, a Girl Scout camp, were kidnapped and murdered. And so that's kind of the backdrop in the sense of I'm not dealing with the murders of those 3 sweet little girls, but I am dealing with that happens while they're at their camp. Ooh. And so it's kind of like the fear factor. I'm trying to balance the fear factor while also trying to show these 4 girls are really good friends and having a good time. But there's the reality of 4 little girls were just killed. They'll never have this summer. They'll never fall in love. They'll never go to college. They'll never drive a car. And the realities of how short life is. That's kind of the swirl of the story.
Okay.
It's largely about friendship. It's about friendship and can friendship survive? So, and there's lots of secrets. Everybody's got a secret.
Secrets are good. Yeah. I like those in stories and how they come out.
Well, they think they've told each other everything, but they haven't. Yeah.
There's always the but.
Yeah. It's always
cool. So what are the best places for people to follow you?
Anywhere on social media. Twitter.
You're all over? Okay.
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm even on TikTok. Not much happening there except seeing me work out at the gym. But,
nice.
So yeah, just my name, Rachel Hauck. RACH.
Okay.
HAUCK. My website is rachelhauck.com.
Okay. Excellent. I will put those in the show notes.
Oh yeah. And if they're readers and they're on BookBub, I'd love for them to follow me on BookBub. Because then you get notices when books are released or anything is happening, if something's on sale or whatever. So BookBub is a great place to hang out and follow the authors that you love.
That's cool. Is that similar-ish for the reader experience as like a Goodreads or?
I think so. It's very different than Goodreads. So it depends. I don't think authors mind hanging out at BookBub. We like recommending other authors' books.
Yeah.
For readers, you can recommend a book to your followers, and you can leave a review.
Okay.
Goodreads, that's a hard place for authors to hang out, because
Gotcha.
some of those reviews are really rough. So one of the mottos about an author is don't read your reviews, but sometimes you stumble upon them. So Goodreads, but also follow on Goodreads. There's information there as well. But
I'll have to check that out. Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes to the BookBub. I'm curious about that now. So.
Oh yeah. I like BookBub a lot, mostly because it does let me know, like, an author I follow has a new book out. I get
right. Well, cool. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I hope it was fun.
It was fun. That's how they tend to go. I have my notes, and sometimes we follow them and sometimes we don't. That's okay.
That's okay. I know. I love talking about writing, talking about books, and talking with authors, and talking with readers.
Yeah. That's so funny. Well, thank you, Rachel. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thanks for joining me today on the Literary Escapes podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode and maybe would like some more Literary Escape book recommendations, then come check out the Literary Escape Society. We're a community of travelers who love books, or maybe book lovers who love to travel. Either way, if you need an escape, a literary escape, come join us as we read our way around the world together, one book at a time. Check out the show notes to learn more about the Literary Escape Society. And we'll see you next time on the next episode.